Welcome back. We are happy that you have chosen to share with us presentation number 2 in this very important series on family finance management. You'd remember that in part 1, we looked at the subject, it is your life, plan it and enjoy it. In this second presentation, we want to look at family budgeting as a very important aspect of Christian financial stewardship. It is really a part of the stewardship of treasure, and so we'll be looking at this entire experience from a successful family finance management aspect. You would have given your tithe. You would have given your offering. And some people think that their financial responsibility stops at that point. Brothers and sisters, I'm happy to say to you in this presentation that we are not finished as far as our financial responsibility is concerned when just returning our tithe and our offering. God is not just the owner of tithe and offering. God is the owner of all of your finances. And so in this presentation, we want to answer that very important question. Why focus on the rest? Why? Because biblical stewardship is about the management of life, not just tithe and offering. Presentations of a financial nature is not about fundraising. Presentations of a financial nature in Christian stewardship is about helping you to understand that God wants you to be successful in the management of all your financial affairs. It is important, especially in these times. I don't know how it has affected you, but in recent times we have been affected in dealing with financial matters. The financial reality of the world in recent times has caused some to be concerned because in many cases, some people have gone home with a loss because of a loss of salary. Their job just became redundant. Whether it was COVID or otherwise, they just lost their job. There are some homes where 2 persons were employed, and because of financial issues in the employment arena, one person went home and they now must live on 1 income. Then there's the issue of lowering of incomes. So you have lower incomes to deal with. Some people have had to go home with 20% less, 25% less, in some cases as much as 50% less. Then we must deal with the rising cost of inflation. The item that cost you a particular sum at the beginning of the year is going to cost you a little bit more as you close the year. Why? Simply because of the cost of inflation. The devaluation. Some places are considering to devalue their dollar, whether it's pegged against the US dollar, whether it's pegged against the yen, whether it's pegged against the pound or the euro. Some people are affected because of the issue of devaluation. Then the issue of the high cost of rent or mortgage, or simply the maintenance of the home that you presently have. There are some persons who are affected because they must choose whether they're going to travel or whether they have the privilege to buy a vehicle. Which is cheaper? And I know some persons who are actually selling their vehicles because for them it's cheaper to travel than to maintain a vehicle. The high cost of education. And there are some places where the government is paying the tuition cost of first degrees and sometimes second degrees, and in some rare cases, third degrees, or that doctoral program that you want to do. But the gate in some places are closing, that financial opportunity is closing, and so you must now bear the cost of yourself and your children's higher education. Then there's the issue of growing old and retiring. Are you planning for that? How are you planning for that? Is that a financial concern that you presently have? The issue of medical bills. Do you know that some medical issues can wipe out your total savings and your investments of a lifetime in one illness? And so we must help you to appreciate that you must have a family finance plan for yourself, for your home, for your family. And there are a number of other issues, I suppose, that would give you that kind of challenge. So let's talk successful family finance management. Where do you start? Brothers and sisters, you start by understanding that if you must be successful in your family finance management, every family, therefore, must have a budget. But I don't want you to get up tomorrow morning and just decide, well, I've heard a presentation on family budgeting, so here's what, pen and paper, and I'm going to be putting figures down based on my income and my proposed expenditure. No. In this presentation, as we talk to family budgeting, I want to divide the presentation into two parts. Part one is the stage where we prepare to make a budget. So it's the budget preparation stage. And then we talk to part two. That's the implementation stage. When we talk about preparation, what are we talking about? Well, if you're going to make a budget for your home, for your family, for yourself, why not start by keeping a record of spending patterns for a minimum of 1 or 3 months to up to 1 year. What have been your expenditure over the last few months? What have you been spending on? What have you been spending on more? What have you been spending on less? What are the items that you spend on? So keep a record. Those who study in the area says for a minimum of 3 months, up to 1 year, look at how you've been spending from your income. Step number 2, very important. Compare spending habits with personal or family plans. What are your family plans? Or do your family have plans? So before you start making a budget, before you start putting figures on paper, must have a family plan. What are your family plans? So there are 3 children in the home, and you want one to be a doctor, and you want one to be a teacher, and the other one would take over the family business. If that's what you have for yourself and as a plan for your children, then you start to compare now your spending habits based on that plan. What are your own personal plans for a higher education? What are your plans for retirement? Compare your personal and family plans with your spending habits. Then step number 3, and this is a preparation stage. Step number 3, you do all of these before you start putting pen to paper. Step number 3, very important. Step number 3, include all expenditure items in the budget. So you must now make a comprehensive list of the things that you spend on. Yes, do not exempt any item. Oh yes, ladies, those toiletry items that you buy, you must budget for it. Gentlemen, you go to the barber, you must budget for it. You are entertained by all kinds of mediums. You must budget for it. You plan to go out and eat out sometimes, you must budget for it. You're planning a family vacation or personal vacation or a vacation just for your husband and wife, you want to enjoy your anniversary on vacation, then you must plan for it. It must become a part of your budget. So include all expenditure items in your budget. Number 4, don't be fooled by expenses that takes place on an irregular basis. Yes, there are some items that takes place on an irregular basis. There are some insurances that you pay semi-annually. You pay maybe twice for the year, every 6 months, but you must budget for it on a monthly basis. You don't buy clothes every month, but you must budget for it on a monthly basis. In some countries, in some places, your electricity bill comes once every 2 months, but you must budget for it on a monthly basis. Your water bill may come once every 3 months, but you must budget for it on a monthly basis. So be careful. Don't be fooled by those. They can sneak upon you, and you don't want them to take you by surprise. You have an expenditure, plan for it, so that when the time comes, you are able then to take care of that expenditure. And number 5, very important, if you got nothing else, as I said to you, in the preparation stage of making a family budget, I want you to get number 5. Number 5, step number 5, include the children in the preparation of the family budget. Brothers and sisters, this is so very important. There are many homes, many families, where the parents sit down and they plan the family budget. And the children grow up from toddlers into childhood, into puberty, into adolescence, into early adults. And they grow up to be adults and do not know how to manage their finances because we never took the time to teach them. It is wise counsel to bring your children into the financial management of the home. Let them know. Let them know what you're working for. Let them know, of course, as they grow up, the age will become a very telling factor in how much you let them expose them to. But as they grow, involve them in family finance management. Teach them how to manage money. So as they grow up and they become adults and they have their own homes, they would have learned the techniques of family finance management from their very home of origin. All right, so we have talked about the whole issue of preparing for a family to prepare a budget. How do you do that? You follow those 5 steps and you are prepared now to put pen to paper and do the implementation stage of family budgeting. Where do you get started? Well, you get started by first knowing your income. What are you working with? What sum are you working with? What is included in determining that sum? Salary or salaries, commissions, interest and dividends, and other sources of income. So you want to put on the table all your sources of income. That is called your gross income. Whatever monies there may be, whatever sources they may be coming from, you want to pull them together. It is called your gross income. That's where you get started. So you're working with a total figure, a gross income. Whether you have a loan salary coming in the home, whether you have 2 salaries coming in the home, whether you work on commissions, all of that are included. So you have a gross income. The next step you want to take is to take care of your non-negotiable expenses. What are your non-negotiable expenses? Expenses that you don't negotiate on. Expenses that you cannot afford to negotiate on. Expenses that's going to cost you more if you try to compromise on them. So let's look at some things that are considered non-negotiable expenses. Of course, your tithe and your offering. Brothers and sisters, there are some persons who think that it is cute to compromise on their tithe and their offering. There are some people who say to me, Pastor, you don't understand. I have so many expenses that I can't return my tithe and my offering. Because if I do, then I wouldn't be able to pay my expenses. Well, my brothers and sisters, let me teach you this morning. Let me teach you in this presentation. Let me teach you this important financial lesson. When you are faithful to God in your tithe and your offering, you are positioning yourself in the pathway of the blessings of God. When you refrain from returning your tithe and offering, you are actually robbing God. And you can't be robbing God and expect God to bless you. So for your own sake, do not compromise on your tithe and your offering. So that when you're budgeting, when you're putting pen to paper, when you're making that family budget, put that tithe and that offering as item number 1. That must be a non-negotiable expense. Then, of course, there's government taxes. And I know what happens in many places, in many countries of the world. The government do not trust you enough to return your taxes. So the government decides, you know what, we're going to take out your taxes before you get your salary, your take home. But your government expenses, or rather taxes, are non-negotiable. If you have a loan, then your loan payment must be a non-negotiable. And there may be others, but there are some non-negotiable expenses that you want to take care of. So, number 2, take care of your non-negotiable expenses. And then number 3, and I've put number 3 just where I've put number 3 because there's a particular reason for that. I've come to learn that if I just allow you to consider your income and begin to engage in expenditure, that by the time you're finished with writing down all your expenses, you would have no place, no money left for savings. So number 3, after your non-negotiable expenses, the next item you want to have on your list, on your budget form, must be savings/investments. These are based on your family goals. What are your family goals? If you have family goals, then you must be saving for it. And it's also wise to understand the difference between savings and investing. Saving is I put it down, and just what I put down, that's just what I'm going to get out of it. Investing, however, is putting away that which I can afford to put away that I don't need to use in the short term, but that which can bear interest for me. And so there's a difference between savings and investment, but surely in your budgeting, you want to make certain that you put that away before you begin spending. Yes, there's some short-term saving plans that you must have. Whether you put it in the credit union, you put it in the bank, you put it in another financial institution, but it's just short-term savings. You need something in the short term, you can go there and dip into that fund. There's a medium-term savings plan where you save with medium-term plan in mind. And then there's a long-term saving plans where you save for long-term. And one of the long-term plans that you want to save for or invest for would be your retirement. So number 3, savings and or investments based on your family goals. And then number 4, you must now understand, having dealt with those, number 1, number 2, and number 3, your commitment to God, your savings, you want to look at number 4. Know now what your net spendable income is. After you would have dealt with your tithe and your offering, after you'd have put away your savings from this total sum that you're working with, you must then know, you will then know, what is your net spendable income. What is the total sum available to you for spending? And that's easy. The total income minus your non-negotiable expenses, and I've just included savings as a non-negotiable expense, equals your net spendable income. So you have now your net spendable income. This is the money that you have at your disposal for spending. This is the money that you have. And I have an example there. If your income is $10,000 and your non-negotiable expenses is $3,000, then your net spendable income would be $7,000. All right? So now we are getting to the place where you're putting items in and sums to those items. Where do you get started? Well, every budget should have a food bill. What's your food bill? And I don't know. There's some families that are larger than others, and so you'd have to determine what your food bill is. And that's why we said to you in the preparation stage that you have to now look at how you've been spending. What has been your spending pattern? So your food bill, the grocery bill for the week or for the month, emergency grocery items, because you may have a grocery bill and in the process of the month something may run out for whatever the reasons may be, and you need to have an emergency item replaced during the course of the month. So there should be an emergency grocery sum. And then there's the market, the fruit and vegetables that you would need in order to ensure that you have a proper, balanced, nutritious food supply on your tables for the month. So all of these would total your food bill for the month. It will sum up to the total food bill for the month. After food, then what? Housing. Housing has mortgage. Or if you don't have a mortgage and you're renting, then you have to budget for the rent. And if you have a home, then be careful that sometimes, and let me just teach you this now, because there's sometimes when you have your home and the mortgage is paid off, and so you think, I don't have to budget for my home anymore because my mortgage is all paid off and my home is now totally mine. Brothers and sisters, your home will continue to need maintenance and improvement and repairs and sometimes extension based on the size of your family. Always put aside, even if you have completed paying your mortgage, always put aside something for the maintenance of your home. Insurances and taxes, that's for the home. And you don't want to compromise that. You can compromise that to your own demise. Please be careful with that. Electricity, I've put electricity in the housing component of your budget. A telephone, whether it's a landline or a cell, I've put that in housing. Your water rates, I've put that into your housing. Furniture and appliances are part of housing, and there may be others that I've missed. But in all of these, you have one item on your budget, and that item is called housing. All right? I've moved from housing now to clothing. And yes, I said to you earlier that you don't buy clothing every month, but you should budget for it. If your income is a monthly income, then for clothing, you should budget on a monthly basis. Also be aware that there are different kinds of clothing. Clothing that you use for work, clothing that you use for church, clothing that you use for special occasions, clothing that you use for other reasons. And some people say home clothing that you use just at home for relaxation purposes. Your total clothing bill would include all of those. Then there's the issue of automobile. If you're blessed to have a vehicle, then somebody says to me, it's nice to have a vehicle, but it's a very expensive luxury. And I agree with them, because automobile has a cost for operations. Automobile costs may include installment if you're still paying for it. And if you're not paying for it, I promise you that maintenance and repairs are going to take a toll on your budget. So either way, you have to budget for it. There's the gas and oil and other repairs that you would need to do, other replacements that you will have to do. The inspection fee, the cleaning, the insurance to run it on the road, all of those you must be budgeted for. So budget for automobile, using all the items on the list and maybe some items that you can create of your own that I may not have exhausted in this list. But there's a total automobile cost. That's a part of your budget. Personal insurance. There are some people who think that that's not important. I want to encourage you. It's a good thing to have because sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you think it's unimportant and then you go to get a loan because you want to take a mortgage to buy a property. And then the person sitting over on the other side of the desk says to you, you know what, we need to cover this loan that you're taking. And so in order to cover the loan that you're taking, you need to have a life insurance for the sum that you're borrowing. And because you didn't consider it earlier in your life, you must now pay more in your premiums. So consider it. Consider it. Consider the value of personal insurance, whether it's life insurance, whether it's annuity, whether it's medical insurance, or some other form of insurance that you need to consider. Personal insurance should be a part of your budget. So total insurance cost, very important. Then we come to medical. No, I know you don't get sick every Monday morning. You have been taking care of your health. But sometimes you will get ill. And when you get ill, it's good to know that you have budgeted for your medical. What are some of the things that you want to consider in your medical, in that medical item? Or you want to consider doctor's visit? What is the cost of your doctor's visit? I remember the last time I went to the doctor and he told me the cost for my visit. I just had to open my eyes, my jaw dropped, and I said to myself, wow, is that the cost, doc? And he said, yes, that's the cost of my visit. Well, I just had to get the money and pay him. So when you're making your budget, put a little thing in for medical. Then there's a prescription. After you see the doctor, he writes up a prescription and sends you to the pharmacy. Then there's the issue of transportation. If you have your own vehicle, bless Jesus for that. But if you don't, then you're going to have to hire a vehicle to get you to the medical institution. And so you want to put into your budget a few cents for medical, your total medical cost in your budget. Then there's a whole issue of debt. Whether you are into debt before you decided to make a budget, or you would have gotten into debt after you made a budget, that you want to make sure that you have in your budget a place for a few cents put away for paying your debts. What are your debts? We're going to talk about that in presentation number 4. But in this series, as we deal with budgeting, make sure that in your budget you cover your debts. You cover your debts. Then there's the whole issue of education. Education has a high price tag. Somebody says, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. I don't want to encourage you to try ignorance. I just want to say to you that if you are going to engage in education for yourself, for your family, for your children, then you must plan for it. Don't let it take you by surprise. Don't wait until the beginning of the school year then to wonder, where's tuition going to come from? Where's the cost of uniform and books and other necessaries? Where's it going to come from? No. Plan for it. Budget for it. Education has tuition. It has books and papers and projects. It has extra travel and other expenditure, tuition included. Be careful that you budget for it. So what's the education cost? And that's why it's important to consider your spending habits, because now we will know what you've been actually spending on education. So put it into your budget. And then, of course, I must put into the budget entertainment. Yes. All work and no play, somebody says, makes Jack a dull boy. And maybe Jill too. So you must budget for entertainment. What are your entertainment habits? What are your entertainment plans? Whether it's CDs and DVDs, and somebody says to me, I don't have to worry about that anymore because there's YouTube. Well, maybe we have come a long way. But plan and budget your entertainment. You've got to pay for cable. Outdoor dining, you must pay for that. Babysitting while you go outside to dine. Social activities in other forms. Vacation, whether it's personal vacation or family vacation. Plan your entertainment. Don't let it take you by surprise. You see, if you don't plan your entertainment, I know what's going to happen. You're going to get an invitation from somebody to come to some place in the world to a very important occasion, maybe the wedding of your best friend, maybe the wedding of a family member, and you want to get there, you want to go there, and you're planning your vacation, but you don't know where the money is coming from, you didn't plan for it, you didn't budget for it, there's no money anywhere, and you decide, you know what, I'm going to have to take a loan to do this. If you've been planning it, then and budgeting for it, then you would have had the money in your entertainment budget. And then, of course, there's miscellaneous. But you know there's nothing called miscellaneous, right? Every expenditure can be identified. But I've put miscellaneous and included in miscellaneous a whole bundle of items that we don't always consider. Toiletries, the hairdresser, the barber, the laundry, the dry cleanings, subscription. Yes, when you plan to give gifts to various persons for various reasons, you should plan for that. And put it into your budget so that you know this is the volume of money I have for gifts, whether those gifts are graduation gifts, whether those gifts are birthday gifts, whether those gifts are wedding gifts. If you plan your budget and you put an item in there for gifts, then you know that you have some monies in there. So when a gift is required, then you can comfortably purchase that gift. All right? And then of course, there's a whole issue of emergency. Every budget should have an emergency fund. Do not prepare your budget without putting an emergency fund in place. And I can't tell you how much to put in it. Every situation is different. You may have little children, and the small ones among us can find themselves in difficulty sometimes. It's so easy to miss them. You think you've been keeping your eyes on them all the time, and just all of a sudden you miss them and find themselves in difficulty, and you need some funding in an emergency. You should have an emergency item in your budget. Yes, you should have an emergency item. I hear you screaming, Pastor, you don't understand. Based on what you have shared so far, my money has already ended a long time ago, Pastor. Please include an item called emergency in your family budget. And then as we close, let us appreciate budget reconciliation. I had to get here because at some point in time, you've got to stop and make sure that the budget can be reconciled. How do you reconcile the budget? You consider total monthly income minus non-negotiable expenses. Remember, we dealt with that early. So you take from the total income, you minus your non-negotiable expenses. That leaves you with your net spendable income. And then when you deal with your net spendable income and you minus your actual expenses, then you must end up with nil. Well, those gurus in the financial sector will tell you that it is not wise to end up with nil. So in preparing a family budget, always do it so that the budget will have what is called flexibility. And they say flexibility should be 2 to 5% of your income. Whatever you're working with as your net spendable income, don't budget so tightly that at the end of the budgeting list, all you have is 0.00. Always have a few cents more, because you may find yourself in an environment where you budgeted, let's say, $2,000 for food, and then you go to the grocery and the same items you paid for last month and spent $2,000, you are now spending $2,200. And you either have to leave some items out, or you can now draw from your flexibility fund that 2 to 5% to be able to cover you for the month. So that there should be a flexibility sum of between 2 to 5% on your budgeted figure that allows you to accommodate unforeseen expenditure. Brothers and sisters, I thought that this was a necessary presentation, that this was an important presentation, so that you can manage your finances in such a way that you get better out of your finances. It's important for you to return your tithe. God expects you to do that as an indication of your loyalty to Him. It's important that you give a free will offering that demonstrates your love for Jesus. But it is also important that after you would have given your tithe and your offering, that you learn to manage the rest. And the best way I know how to teach you is to help you to make a family budget and live by it. May God bless you. And finally, as we close this presentation, part 2 of family finance management, let me just share with you on a light note. If you're working for Flintstone salary, do not try to live the Jetsons lifestyle. Somebody says it differently. Somebody says to me, Pastor, it's another way of saying, if you're working for Morby income, then do not try to live the champagne lifestyle. Either way, a word to the wise is sufficient. The Apostle Paul said to us in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 6 that godliness with contentment is great gain. Brothers and sisters, as we close this presentation, I want to pray for you. I want to pray that God will bless you. I want to pray that God will bless you and prosper you financially, materially. I want to pray that God will give you also the wisdom that you need to manage your finances to His honor and to His glory. I encourage you, therefore, let us be faithful to God in your tithe, in your offering, and in your finance, your family finance management. Father and God, we just give you thanks. We praise you and we glorify your name. What a wonderful Father you are to us. You have said to us, dear God, in your word, and we want to claim your promises. When you said through the Apostle Paul in Philippians chapter 4 and verse 19, but my God shall supply all your need according to your riches in glory by Christ Jesus. I pray for every viewer today. I pray, dear God, for every listener. And I pray, dear Lord, that you would just bless them. Bless them, dear God, because of their love for Jesus and their faithfulness to you. Bless them, dear God, in their family finance management, in their personal management of finances. That, oh God, as they manage their finances to your honor and glory, that they will understand, they will experience what David says in Psalm chapter 37 and verse 25, when David says, I was young, but now I'm old. Yet I've never seen the righteous forsaken, nor a seed begging bread. Give us wisdom, Lord. Bless your people. As we manage to your honor and to your glory, we thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. And I invite you to look out for part 3 of family finance management.